Gustavo, Don Héctor ha hecho una acusación muy seria.
Hey guys, Kiwi here, warning of spoilers for Breaking Bad, El Camino, and Better Call Saul up to Season 6, Episode 9. In this video, I'll be breaking down Gus's meeting with the cartel at Eladio's hacienda, along with the many implications that it brings to conclude the Better Call Saul cartel storyline and also set up the Breaking Bad cartel storyline. Like the video if you end up enjoying it, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter for more Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad updates. With that being said, let's jump into the breakdown. We see Gus arriving at Don Eladio's hacienda for a meeting as he drives in past all the fancy cars. Notice how out of all the vehicles there, Gus is the only one who drives a regular car, keeping up with his humble facade. Gus has all the money in the world, not only from his cartel business, but also his legitimate business Los Pollos, along with being able to launder all of his ill-gotten gains through Los Pollos and Magical. Although Gus has more than enough wealth to own a fancy car and a fancy house, he keeps up a modest facade in order to not raise attention to himself in the public eye, along with in order to not come across as a threat to the cartel. So I guess Gus was only half flying to last episode when he said he had to go out of town for a family meeting, since here we actually do see him go out of town for a cartel family meeting. As Gus gets frisked for weapons, he flinches slightly but did his best to pretend not to be in pain as to not give away that he'd been shot in the side. Gus meets Hector, the twins, Bolsa, and Eladio, and greets them all respectively. Notice how Hector, Bolsa, and Eladio all get greeted as Don, with Gus the only one without a title. Although Gus is a big enough earner within the cartel as their partner that he definitely deserves a title, he isn't given one, and is instead labeled as the Chicken Man, as we've seen time and time again. Chicken Man is obviously not only in reference to Los Pollos, but it's also implying that he himself is a chicken, which is one of the many insults that the cartel members try to do to keep him in check as a worker beneath them. Because Gus is an outsider, the cartel will never give Gus the respect that he deserves, and he knows this. Of course, Gus's goals aren't just to gain respect from the cartel and work as an equal, but instead to eventually take them over. Even though this is the case, the ways that they've always treated him definitely solidifies his goals in taking them down and replacing them with himself. After the events of episode 608, we wondered if Hector was going to do anything in regards to being the only one who knew that Lalo was still alive, and here we find out that he has made an accusation against Gus. Very interesting that Gus actually visits Eladio in person, with this potentially being the first time he's been there ever since his former partner Max was killed there right in front of him. Back in the Better Call Saul 304 flashback to Eladio poolside with Bolsa and Hector, Bolsa apologized to Eladio for Gus not being there in person and said how he'd try to make it next time. Eladio told Bolsa not to bother and that Gus can stay north of the border to keep doing whatever he's doing to be such a large earner.
Él quería venir personalmente a pagarle sus respetos. Él promete que pronto lo hará.
Que se quede donde está y que siga haciendo lo que está haciendo.
Due to the 304 scene, I always thought that Gus going to kill Eladio and other cartel members in Breaking Bad was the first time that he'd been there since Max was killed, but here we see how that's not the case. Since this is where Max was killed, I can understand why Gus wouldn't want to go and visit, but also Hector's serious accusations against him definitely warrants an in-person visit. Hector spelt out a whole note letter by letter with the help of the twins, and that must have been a very painful and drawn-out experience. I can only imagine how long that must have taken, considering how long scenes take in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul just watching Hector translate a single sentence or even a single word. Hector's note states that Lalo called him explaining how Gus sent the assassins to kill him in the season 5 finale and how Lalo was going to confront Gus face to face but instead disappeared. The note also tells Eladio to look into Gus's eyes and that he will see hatred towards him. Hector accuses Gus of being their enemy and demands blood for blood, which is a reference to Gus's speech to Lalo in the last episode.
Y ustedes, los Salamancas, son peores parásitos que hay. Dicen que creen en sangre por sangre, pero solo entienden sangre por dinero. Son unas putas.
Hector obviously wasn't there and didn't hear what Gus said to Lalo, nor did Lalo's vlog to Eladio ever see the light of day, but this just proves Gus's points about the Salamancas from his speech in 608 to be true. Eladio and Bolsa tell Gus that he needs to speak, but Gus responds by saying how it doesn't warrant a response while keeping a stone-cold face. This was about the best thing that Gus could do, as giving a response or showing any emotion towards the accusation would simply further implicate himself. Gus instead lets Eladio and Bolsa do the talking, to which they state all the evidence. They confirm how no one overheard Lalo's phone calls to Hector, which was originally to protect Lalo having an advantage against Gus, except now it's backfiring on Hector. Even if Hector wasn't going to tell Eladio that Lalo was still alive or act on it, he could have at least told the twins or someone else, but hindsight is 2020. Also, considering how impatient the twins are in Breaking Bad in regards to getting revenge against Walt and eventually Hank by proxy due to Tuco, they've probably been impatient in the past past, and so Hector probably knew that the twins would be too impatient for revenge to keep the secret of Lalo still being alive under wraps. Hector obviously didn't think that Lalo would lose, and so he never planned for any fail-safes for taking care of the situation in the event that Lalo was taken out. But back to the meeting. The twins confirmed that they supposedly saw Lalo's dead body, and the dental records to that body did match up with Lalo's. That dead body was of course Lalo's doing in order to pretend to be dead, so it's ironic how Lalo's actions that initially were meant to give him an advantage eventually ended up working against his family and instead resulted in gaining Gus the advantage. This is yet another example of Lalo's plans being ironically used against the Salamancas here, with Hector and Lalo not considering how this evidence would work against them if they lost and Lalo was actually killed for real. Also, Nacho's dying lie that he told to help protect Gus in regards to the Peruvians ended up working, as Mike planted bank statements in a replacement safe at Nacho's house for Bolsa to find, as we saw near the beginning of the season. I like how Mike replacing Nacho's safe also parallels Mike replacing Jimmy and Kim's fridge in the apartments, and how the earlier moments with Nacho and his cover-up are finally coming to fruition. Since Gus's plan to pin Nacho for being hired by the Peruvians to kill Lalo worked out, it gives Gus reason to keep his word to Nacho and Mike in regards to leaving Nacho's father alone. As much as I hate how Nacho died, he was my favorite character. I knew it had to happen eventually, and in this episode we see that he didn't die in vain, as his plan with Gus worked, resulting in Nacho's father getting to live the rest of his days working at his business. Since Gus won't speak and Hector can't speak, with all the evidence in Gus's favor, Eladio wraps up the meeting as there's clearly nothing else to discuss. Eladio tells Hector that he can stay the night since he's come a long way. This is a double-edged sword because on one hand it is Eladio giving Hector a sign of respect, but on the other hand it's Eladio dismissing Hector and implying that he won't get the justice that he feels he deserves. Hector starts profusely ringing his bell in defiance that Eladio is letting Gus get away with this, which Eladio understands, but he plays it off as if Hector is denying the offer to stay the night, with Eladio saying that he insists.
Duermes en mi cama. No, insisto.
Hector is in disbelief that Eladio won't take action against Gus, and you can see the faces on the twins, they're just as surprised as Hector is. Originally it was only Gus who hated Hector for killing Max, but ever since Hector has gained a long list of reasons to hate Gus back, with this becoming another one of them. For example, Hector hates Gus for embarrassing him in that episode 304 flashback scene with Gus bringing in like 3 times the profit as Hector.
¿Qué te parece, Héctor? Mira lo que nos dio Gustavo. Está impresionante, ¿no?
Es okay.
Es ok. Me parece que alguien está un poco celoso.
Along with at the end of season 3 when Hector was told by the cartel that his product would be smuggled across the border with Gus's chicken trucks permanently.
Con Eladio, con Bolsa y contigo.
As we know, in season 3 that happened due to Gus getting Mike to sabotage Hector's own smuggling operation by having one of his trucks get caught at the border.
What's he doing here?
The boss wants you to settle this.
The boss can suck me.
Hector was planning on using Nacho's father as a new smuggler.
Don Hector, please. Don't worry, I take good care of Papi. He make money a lot more than with his little sewing machine.
But wound up in a wheelchair before that could come to fruition, which was of course secretly a result of Nacho's plan to try and kill Hector in order to save his father. Hector has always felt threatened by Gus for being such a huge earner for the cartel since he's an outsider, especially since Hector is the cartel OG and doesn't like the new kid on the block performing better and stealing his spotlight, so to speak.
Me and my family, we built this whole business. Salamanca money, Salamanca blood.
And now, Hector also hates Gus for killing Lalo, probably just as much as Gus hates Hector for killing Max. As we know, Gus won't stop there, as he plans to have every single Salamanca killed while leaving Hector alive as the final Salamanca to witness it all, just like Gus told Lalo he would in episode 608.
I will save him to the last. Before he dies, he will know I buried every one of you.
This is a horrible yet classic cliche of I'm gonna keep you alive and kill all your friends and family first and make you watch and then finally kill you myself, which as we know in Breaking Bad Gus does do and mocks Hector for it. This of course ends up being Gus's downfall, which Walt used to his advantage to give Hector the last laugh, or ding rather. Ding 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 ding. taking down Gus with him as one last act of revenge, giving one final blood for blood moment as Hector had nothing else to lose. It's crazy how well written Gus's vendetta against Hector is between their story of revenge and blood for blood against each other as they continuously go back and forth until they finally take each other down. This is also true in the real world with actual cartels, since the blood for blood retaliation rabbit hole never truly ends. But back to Better Call Saul, as the twins take Hector away, they lift him in his wheelchair over the steps on the patio, which I just find absolutely hilarious. Just like when the twins carried Hector in his chair up to Nacho's body at the end of 603, it takes a very serious situation and breaks the tension for a moment, giving me quite a laugh as the twins carry Hector in his chair. I also saw this hilarious meme on social media relating to the twins taking Hector away without Eladio doing anything against Gus, and now every time I watch this part of the scene I can't help myself but think of it and chuckle up a bit. After Hector leaves, Eladio makes fun of him ringing his bell, which is the real hysterical moment out of this scene. Even though Hector's a horrible person, I almost feel bad laughing at it considering Hector does have a very serious disability, but I can't help myself as Eladio's impersonation of Hector is just too good to be true. This is clearly Eladio continuing to try to brush off Hector's serious accusations and lighten the mood, trying to imply to Gus that he doesn't take Hector seriously in this moment, even if he does. Eladio tells Gus that the South Valley will remain Salamanca territory, but tells Gus that he can manage the rest of the North. Also, even though Gus came a long way as well, being in equal distance to Hector since they both came from Albuquerque, Eladio tells Gus that he must leave as to not spark any more animosity between Gus and Hector. Although this may be insulting to Gus, I do agree that having Gus and Hector sleep under the same roof right after that meeting would be a bad idea, something that Gus also probably agrees on, as he definitely doesn't want to be there any longer than he has to. Although Don Eladio probably knows that Hector's telling the truth, he still allows Gus to get away with it due to the evidence being stacked in his favor. This is also why Gus didn't give a response, because he knew that they had nothing on him and that the evidence would speak for itself. Eladio tells Gus that he did see hate in his eyes, which may be Eladio implying to Gus that he does know that Hector was telling the truth. Although Eladio is usually portrayed as a charismatic fool, here we see that Eladio does have the smarts to figure out what truly happened. That being said, Eladio sees the situation for what it is and tells Gus that a little bit of hate is okay as long as Gus knows who's the boss. Eladio and Bolsa are willing to take Gus's side even if they know that he's in the wrong, not only due to the evidence being on his side, but also since he's such a huge earner for them. This shows that they value how much Gus is worth to them over the fact that he may be disrespecting and sabotaging the Salamancas, which as we know eventually becomes their downfall in Breaking Bad. Also notice how tense Bolsa is during the whole meeting, as he is Gus's middleman to the cartel. He pled for Gus to say something, and even though Gus didn't, things still wound up in their favor. After the meeting, Bolsa is so relieved that he pours himself a drink, not even thinking about pouring Gus one, showing that he still thinks of himself as above Gus. The scene ends with Gus staring into Eladio's pool, which is a huge reference to him doing the same thing in Breaking Bad. Now with Lalo out of the way, Gus can focus on torturing Hector along with taking down the rest of the cartel. I believe that this is the moment where Gus starts plotting his scheme against Eladio and the cartel to take them out by poisoning them with Zafiro Añejo, as we see in Breaking Bad. Likewise, jumping forward to that Breaking Bad scene, when we see Gus staring down into the pool at that same spot, it's Gus realizing how his plans have come to fruition and how everything has come down to this. I love how they included this symbolism into the show, showing the years of planning that went into Gus fully taking down the cartel. This really helps build up the cartel storyline in Breaking Bad and gives small moments like this such a greater meaning. More symbolism is the fact that this is the spot at the pool where his former partner Max died, implying that Gus is doing this all for him to get revenge against the cartel for killing him. Originally, the Breaking Bad creators probably did intend on Gus looking down in the pool in Breaking Bad to be him thinking about getting revenge for Max, but now with this Better Call Saul scene added as context, it just brings so much more to the moment in Breaking Bad when it finally happens. Although Eladio was smart enough to realize that Gus was probably at fault for Lalo, and that Hector was telling the truth, he mistakenly thought that he could keep Gus in line, not realizing Gus's true goals in regards to his vendetta against them. Eladio's greed for thinking that he could keep Gus in line ends up being his downfall, as he could have totally taken Hector's side in this Better Call Saul scene, even with no evidence, which would have prevented their deaths. Speaking of deaths, it's crazy to think how everyone at this cartel meeting ends up dying in Breaking Bad. First the twins, then Bolsa, Eladio, Hector, and even Gus. This reminds me of Nacho's final scene in 603 where everyone at that meeting would eventually die as well, with Nacho just being the first domino to fall. In many ways, 609 felt like an epilogue to the Better Call Saul timeline, as we're winding down in the series and inching closer and closer to the end of the series. In my opinion, this was a great way to put a bookend on the cartel storyline during 2004, while also leaving it open in ways for Breaking Bad to take over. Let me know what you thought about this final scene showing Gus confront the cartel in the comments comments below. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today. If you're new to the channel or just haven't it already, subscribe and hit that bell notification to stay updated on when I post new content on Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. Check out my Patreon and give a super thanks to help support the channel financially. But most importantly, I thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
That hacienda, I pay for it!
Ding 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 ding. Ay ay ay.